Jewish Education in Media is pleased to present L'Chaim, a program that highlights the people, issues, and events of importance to the Jewish community. Now here is your host, Rabbi Mark Golub.
Welcome to a very special edition of L'Chaim for the High Holidays. I'm Mark Golub, and for many Jews throughout America, throughout the world, the High Holidays of Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, and Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, are signature moments of Jewish identity. Jews who might not attend the synagogue throughout the entire year often make a point to be at the Jewish community, with the Jewish community on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and to be moved by the themes of teshuvah, repentance, and an opportunity to once again commit themselves to living a life in tune with their own core values and their visions for the kind of people they want to be. But high holidays are also a complex time for many in the Jewish community, raising serious questions about the nature of our universe, the meaning and purpose of life, and what God means to each of us, what it means to believe in the reality of a God, and what role God plays in our lives. Well, to address some of these issues, perplexing as they may be, I'm so pleased to be joined by three of my favorite people, rabbis for whom I have the highest regard, who will be sharing their thoughts and feelings about the high holidays. Let me introduce them to you. Rabbi Rachel Ain serves Sutton Place Synagogue, a conservative congregation in New York City. Rachel also sits on the Chancellor's Rabbinic Cabinet of JTS, the Jewish Theological Seminary of America, which of course is the rabbinical school of the conservative movement. Rabbi Mitchell Wohl serves Beth Tfilah in Baltimore, the largest modern Orthodox synagogue in the United States. He's also the author of Pulpit Power and the Unhaggadah, How to Keep the Conversation and Wine Flowing at Your Seder Table. Both books are available at Jewish bookstores everywhere and on Amazon. And Rabbi Steve Gutow, who many of you know, served for more than 10 years as president and CEO of the JCPA, the Jewish Council for Public Affairs. Steve was a member of the President's Council on Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships, and now he's a visiting scholar at NYU, where he's going to create an interfaith advocacy program throughout the country. And before joining the JCPA, Steve served as a rabbi of the Reconstructionist synagogue in St. Louis. And it is wonderful to have you at this table. Thank all of you for joining me.
Nice to be here.
Great to be here.
So I want to talk first about a reality of Jewish life I mentioned a moment ago. And Mitchell, I want to begin with you. There are many people who are only what they call twice-a-year Jews. They only appear in a synagogue, only step foot in the synagogue on the high holidays of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. How do you feel about Jews who only come to the synagogue on the high holidays?
I'm thrilled to see them. It means that they still have what we used to call das Pintel Yid, that little Jewish something in their heart and in their kishkas, and from 2 days a year can come 3. And you said something in your introduction that they come to be with the Jewish community. This is a great way of being with the Jewish community. The reality is the majority of American Jews don't come to services. So should I sit and criticize those who are coming? We tried that one generation ago and lost them.
Yes.
I think it's much better to be welcoming and to be thrilled that they are there.
Do the two of you agree? You want to say it any differently?
No.
Isn't that one? That's really how we
Right.
all feel, right?
Right,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And there was a time, when there was, they were demeaned, people who only came on the holidays. As you said, a generation ago, the insight that you have and the and all of us agree with, was not in the Jewish world, and I am so glad, and I hope our audience hears this. You have three spectacular rabbis all saying the same thing. You only come on the high holidays? Well, good for you, and you're connecting to Jewish life, yes?
I totally agree with that. I would even add something to it, which may not be agreed with by everybody at the table. I think sometimes the high holidays are too formal and too long, and you have this wonderful opportunity when all these people are showing up, and you can make it a little bit more like a wonderful Shabbat while still doing the liturgy and the prayers that we really want to say on the high holidays, but certainly on Rosh Hashanah, there can be more celebration and merriment, and there can be some interesting kinds of conversations on Yom Kippur, which probably all of our synagogues do, but many don't. And I think we're missing the boat because they do come, and whether or not they want to come on Shabbat or just be part of Jewish life in other ways, I think the high holidays are a good place to bring them in, and I think we missed the boat a little bit sometimes.
That's lovely. Anything you want to add?
Well, so I think it's about how do we create different entry points, recognizing that there are the people that do come every week that are looking for the more traditional service, and the service should be there for them if it can be in a way that's meaningful and engaging and thoughtful. But what else are we creating? So I know that I'm proud that we've created different kinds of services to touch people in different ways. So for people in their 20s and 30s who probably felt guilted for many years or heard their parents being guilted into going to shul, and they said, I'm not going to be that Jew, I'm not going to go just because I'm guilty. We now provide opportunities for them to go where it's hitting the highlights, where everything feels that every prayer has been recited. Did they do every page? No, but they got enough, and it was extremely meaningful for them.
I want to take it a step further because I think...
you don't disagree here?
Oh, no, not at all. Listen, I recognize the length of the service. My wife and I were once in New York, and we took a bus tour of Gospel Harlem. And they took us to this church to sit in as part of the service. And they said, the reason why we take you to this church is because they don't mind if you leave early because, you know, the Baptist service can be very long. It can be an hour and a half or two. And I was prepared to convert on the spot. I agree with what Rachel is saying. We have our traditionalists who want the service, who want the full service. Right. But we have to make it engaging, and we have to make it musically engaging, and we have to use music that they know. We can't expect them to know the service as it is right now. But I'll tell you how far we have taken it, and this is in an Orthodox synagogue, although admittedly modern, liberal Orthodox. At 12 o'clock on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, while the service is still going, we have wine and sushi for our singles and college students.
Nice.
Because they're with their community. It's an opportunity for them to plug in. And plugging in over sushi might not be the same as plugging in over the Unasana Tokev, but next year we'll get them for that.
But maybe not. I mean, it's funny. So for our young professional service, we always end with a champagne toast, a toast for the new year.
See, that's the conservative synagogue. The wine wasn't good enough. They have to have champagne. Okay, go ahead.
But it's true. And if they come only for that, Dayenu. I mean, really, it's great.
Mark, so many are not coming.
Right.
So many are turned off and turned away and totally uninterested. Yes. The ones we have come here, Bubba. It's so good to see you.
But where does the sushi take place?
In a side room.
So
not in the main sanctuary.
Yeah. So should I imagine that at a given point in time is an announcement made?
An announcement is made.
And up from the congregation, all the young people, and out the door?
No, usually up from the hallway, all the young people, and come to that.
Where did you go to the holidays as a kid?
To congregation Sherith Israel, which was I still love it because I grew up there, I was born into it, and I taught there until my 30s, high school kids. But it's a conservative. It's a large conservative congregation in Dallas, Texas.
Okay, you grew up in a conservative household.
For sure.
You go to a mainstream conservative synagogue for the high holidays.
Now?
No, then.
Sure, of course.
Did your family dress up?
We did.
Yes.
It's dressed up as I am.
Where did you go?
Har Shalom in Potomac, Maryland.
Lovely. Did you dress up?
Yes.
Where did you go?
Shomer Emunah in Borough Park, Brooklyn.
Did you dress up?
Of course.
Of course. Okay. By the way, there also became this notion that there is something fake about the holidays because people feel that this is the time they have to dress up. How do people come to your synagogue now?
During the week?
No, during
on the high holidays?
Yes. Will they all come now in suits and ties?
Yes.
How about you?
I would say yes.
the
They're
most
certainly
part.
more dressed on the holidays than they are on a typical Shabbat.
Yes.
At the synagogue I go to, absolutely not. There will be some dressed up, but it won't be
But it-
pervasive.
Yes.
Sorry.
It's okay. It won't be pervasive,
Yes.
and there'll be, people will come in all different kinds of like a beautiful white shirt.
Yes. Also informal.
And also informal.
Nice, but informal.
Nice, but informal.
And where are you going?
To the Society for the Advancement
The
of Judaism,
SAJ,
SAJ.
the Reconstructionist Synagogue on West 86th.
But I would say people dress nicely, but it's not a fashion show.
As it used to be.
They are
That has
well
changed.
dressed.
Yes.
There is a professionalism that people are wearing, but it is not a fashion
Okay.
show.
It's respectful
Very-
without being a fashion show.
Right.
Even when it's informal, it's respectful.
Oh, it's definitely respectful, and it's definitely people think it's their finest. And I want to put a plug in for you. You have an amazing daughter who is a major leader at SHA.
I'm very proud of her, and it's very sweet of you to mention that. All right, I want to ask one question, and we're going to discuss this in front of America on television.
Okay.
It's it's an inside baseball type question. How many times do you speak, Mitchell, on the holidays?
4.
4. Rachel,
5.
when you were speaking, when you were leading a congregation, roughly, typically, how many times did you speak?
Generally 5.
Okay.
Could have been 4, but generally 5.
Are you at all anxious about what you're going to say on the holidays, Mitchell?
I wouldn't use the word anxious. I'm concerned. I give a lot of time and energy and thought into what I'm going to speak about. Generally speaking, the Yom Kippur is my 4th sermon, and when I sit down after delivering that sermon, a sermon which can run close to an hour, the first thing I say to myself is, what am I going to talk about next year?
Yes.
But it's not anxious.
Yes. Is that true, by the way? I want people to understand. Mitchell Wohl has spoken in the most significant sermon of the year. It can run up to an hour. You sit down on the pulpit, and your first thought is,
Every year.
what am I saying next year?
Right.
Okay, and you don't call that anxiety. I do, by the way, in a very positive way.
Right.
What about it, Rachel? To what extent?
I'm very conscious. There's certainly a level of anxiety about it. These are people who are coming that might only come a few times a year, as we've already spoken about. And I want to be able to connect with them in the same emotional and relational way that I connect with the people that I see every week.
There's also a difference between Rachel and I. Rachel has been in her synagogue
5
for
years.
5
4 or
years.
5 years. I've been the rabbi 38 years. I'm standing in front of a group of people that are, I've been with them through the life cycle,
Right.
through weddings of their children, through baby namings, through funerals of their parents. I'm talking with friends and family. I feel when I get up to speak that I'm in my living room.
Okay,
And that makes for a certain comfort level.
Okay, I want to tell you my experience, and I want you to respond to this. You know how impressed I am by everything you do, and I've been in your synagogue, and you've been there 38 years.
I don't
No,
know how
no,
impressed you are. You can tell me.
I am. I'm enormously impressed. I've been with my chavurah for 42 years. I started in 1972. What you describe is what I live, okay? I'm there, we're family. We are literally family. And what happened in Connecticut, and you can tell me if it's happened in Baltimore, in New York, and St. Louis, a lot of these people, their immediate family is not nearby.
No.
So the chavurah community really becomes the center of their lives in terms of community and family. So I too am speaking with people I grew up with. I've been there longer than Moses was in the wilderness. And at the same time, it's not about do I worry about who they are and how they feel about me, but this is the time in which a rabbi gets to speak on behalf of the Jewish tradition in a way that is different than any Shabbat or any Yom Tov. And my feeling is, it is an awesome responsibility I have, that here are people who have come. I have to respect them and speak to them in a way that makes them feel, and in consumer America, well, it was worth my time. Did any of that ever? Did you feel at all?
I definitely feel that, but to add to that, in just to this whole idea of anxiety, before Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur, or any time I speak about something important, I feel like I'm supposed to feel some anxiety.
Yes.
And I stress out a little bit to feel it, because I think actually, if I'm a little bit lost and not totally sure of myself, I actually think it's a better talk. And I would say that when I have tried innovative things, like I did a bibliodrama experience on the second day of Rosh Hashanah in St. Louis, where there was Isaac and Abraham, and people were taking roles, and I would call bibliodramas where you pretend you're in the Bible, and it was very scary for me to do that because it was new and it was hard, and people were very emotional. I didn't know what to expect, since I wasn't in charge of the words. The words were really going to be coming back to me from the people in the congregation.
Let me pick up on that. First of all, let me step back from saying there's no anxiety. There's no anxiety when I'm delivering the sermon.
Yes, that's
Right.
we agree.
That I was
I
trying to
agree.
describe to you, the
I'm
comfort
sorry, you're
level there.
absolutely right.
But in the summer,
Correct.
oh my God.
From the previous October.
No question about
Yes,
it.
people don't understand that. People do not understand what it is to be a rabbi in August, heading into September, and here come the high holidays. It's
It starts
impossible
much sooner.
for
It
you to start
starts much-
spur-
Well, and I can wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I can't fall back asleep because my mind is working on that connecting sentence that I still
of the
don't
high
have.
holidays.
Of the high holidays,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
And I would say something else, which goes to Steve. I always have every single word written out in front of me. Every Shabbos, every high holiday, every eulogy, every bar mitzvah charge, so on and so forth. So there's a complete comfort level. If you try something outside of the box, yeah, then you're not 100% sure. Recently, I asked my congregation, and that Saturday I would say there were 400 people in the congregation, to close their eyes, that only I would have my eyes open, and I wanted them to vote on how many are voting for Donald Trump and how many are voting for Hillary Clinton. Now, you never know how that's going to work out. But it worked out well. But anytime I go off script, I hold my breath.
So I feel that I have a healthy anxiety because I have tremendous respect for my congregation.
Yes.
They are taking the time to
Yes.
come. They want to be there. They want to be inspired. And I work on my high holidays from the minute the previous high holidays.
Yes.
And I mean, people ask me, when do you start preparing? And I basically say November 1st, where I keep a digital file and I have 48 typed pages of things that I've clipped all year that I start putting into the 5 categories of sermons. And I work it and I rework it. And like Mitchell said, thinking about what are those connecting sentences? What are those moments? What's the takeaway? That's the anxiety I feel. Once they're written, I get up there
Yes.
and I feel great.
Yes, I understand
Right.
exactly, and it's a very good distinction you made.
Yes.
It's not about, none of us at this table are now worried when we get up to speak, but do we have something to say?
Right.
But I totally agree with you, and I tended to always have any major speech or sermon written, but I do often almost force myself to feel a sense of insecurity. And I'll give you an example. Once I talked about tears on Yom Kippur Eve, Erev Yom Kippur, and I of course brought in personal times when, like, I was in a synagogue in India and got called up. They needed a 10th man at that time. That was the only people that could do it, and it was in the 70s. And And they gave me an aliyah. And I remember the moment when the Shaliach Tzibur in New Delhi, which is a very tiny Jewish community, knew that I could read Hebrew. I mean, when he saw it, and I looked at him and I went, oh my God, I started crying. And when I said that to my congregation about tears on Yom Kippur, I just started crying. And it wasn't like I was crying. I didn't intend to cry.
It was honest.
It was honest tears.
Yeah.
Was this Kol Nidre?
Yeah.
That's lovely. You said that you have 5 categories?
Well, 5 topics if I'm speaking 5 times. And I would always, probably by May or June, certainly by July, at least 3 of those general topics are decided. I don't know what they're going to be each year. They might change. But I start seeing ideas in those 5 categories.
Interesting. You've done this 38 years. Do you ever say to yourself, I've got nothing new to say?
Yeah, but that doesn't stop me from saying it. There's always a variation on a thing.
Exactly.
Right.
And there's always a new way of looking at things, and circumstances always change. I divide up the sermons generally over the high holidays. The Rosh Hashanah sermon is going to be a distinctly Jewish.
Give me an example of a theme.
My
What might people hear on Rosh Hashanah Eve?
My theme this year is Bernie Sanders represent the typical American Jew? And I'll speak about his marriage and his relationship to Israel.
What's your point?
That I'm afraid he is the typical American Jew, and we all have to be concerned about that.
And what's the takeaway you want people to leave the synagogue with?
I want to make sure that your children and grandchildren don't end up Jewishly the way his are.
Okay. Give me an example of a typical Rosh Hashanah Eve sermon that you would give. Eve, Rosh Hashanah.
Okay, that's
First
going to
one.
be very different because my Eve is my smallest crowd. So my Eve is just setting the stage. So I've spoken about the senses of Judaism, the touch, the sounds, the smells, and how we can welcome in a new year through our senses.
And what's the takeaway?
Judaism can be a whole body experience.
Lovely. Give me an example of a sermon you used to begin the high holidays.
The sermon I've given most often to begin the high holidays
Yes.
over my life is a description of the high holidays as birth pangs through Elul, as birth in it's a holiday of birth, the first day of Rosh Hashanah, as adolescence on the second day where there's so much confusion with Rachel and Jeremiah and with Isaac in the Akedah, and then 6 days, I guess 7 days of just thoughtful, intense, Shabbat Shuvah, the Tzom Gedalia, and then Yom Kippur, where you actually are close to death, where you go through, and we're seeming in a weak place. We're told that we have to both make Judaism better in Isaiah, and we have to make. And we also have to make the world better in Isaiah, and we get into even Jonah in these powerful things. And then you get really close to death. And the rabbi said it was like a 60th of death. And then you have this opportunity. You get to and I say all this in the Rosh Hashanah service. You'll get to Ne'ilah, and you're going to get this chance to open yourself to heaven. And at that point, I want to give them a pathway through the entire service experience. And sometimes I've actually gone and elongated on that each day, and explained it. But mostly I don't, because you can only do that once in a while. You can only do, but because you can't do it twice with the congregation. But that is something I often still did at the first night, because I wanted them to think about a journey.
That's lovely. You had a comment?
Well, I was just thinking, that's incredible. So obvious when you say it, and yet so profound to hear it. But I still feel that the era of Rosh Hashanah is still extremely different than the day one.
Why?
Because a lot of people aren't there Erev. Most people are having dinner with their family. Day one is my opportunity to speak to my congregation about something that is truly important as a human, as a Jew, as an American.
Here's an example of a theme you might use.
That tomorrow will be better than today. Mm-hmm. That the sense of Judaism means having tikva, having hope, that connection to Israel, the national anthem, that we need to believe that tomorrow can be better.
Give me another theme of yours.
Well, Rosh Hashanah is going to be distinctly Jewish. It's what we'll
Okay,
call the
Rosh Hashanah.
Forschbeis.
Okay.
You know,
Right.
a little taste.
Okay.
The main is on Rosh Hashanah. Kol Nidre, I'll usually do Israel and world affairs. And but this year, I'm going to focus more on the election.
Okay. By the way, let me ask the three of you. What place does politics have in the synagogue on the high holidays? What do each of you feel about the appropriateness or inappropriateness of bringing politics, and I'm now talking about partisan politics. I'm not talking about the politics of Isaiah. I'm talking about partisan politics. Democrat, Republican, we're in a presidential year as we're taping this program. But whether it's a presidential year or not, to what extent do each of you feel that politics is appropriate for a rabbi to include as a major piece of his or her sermonic material?
I consider it absolutely necessary. I really do. I think it's what's on everybody's mind. And what is politics? Abortion, poverty, our security, nuclear issues, and particularly in terms of Israel. Anything that relates to Israel, you can call a political issue. I consider it an issue of survival, and I feel it's the responsibility of the rabbi to try and educate his congregation accordingly.
What do you think? And by the way, I'm asking somebody who has spent much of his professional life here engaged in what people would call political advocacy. As a rabbi on high holidays, what place does politics have?
I think it's a very small one. And the reason I think that is not because I don't hear everything Mitchell's saying, because it all hits me as true. But on the other side, I feel like my job as a rabbi in a high holiday is to hold that community together. And I don't think it's a time to create that, and you being and I'll just go back, Mitchell, probably being somewhere 38 years gives you a lot of leeway.
Yes.
Because everyone knows, where you are anyway, and they know what a good man you are. But I think mostly I don't want the community to split up. So maybe I would give, I certainly give a sermon on Israel, but it wouldn't be hitting that deep political fault line that will create half the community here, although you can do it without even trying here and I might talk about the environment because it scares me to death. That
I'm not afraid of that division.
Okay. I just want to hear at the moment. Are you saying you would soft pedal politics?
I just probably not do very little of it.
And?
I talk timely. I don't talk politics. I would not get up there and speak about who I'm voting for or who I believe other people should vote for. It would be inappropriate. And I actually take the word sanctuary very, very seriously. This is a sanctuary, and while there might be people who are there to hear a political sermon, there are plenty of people who aren't. And we can have conversations about politics when we leave and we're standing in the foyer. But I certainly speak about timely issues. I mean, when I think about this year, my first day of Rosh Hashanah sermon will focus the state of our nation, the state of our community, not from a political standpoint, but from a religious standpoint. What does it mean to be a member of society? What does it mean to hold the center? As a conservative Jew, holding the center is something that I take very seriously. How do we live that? What institutions need to be strengthened? Is it the home? Is it the family? Is it work? Is it civic engagement? We're seeing extremism on all sides. I don't think that's a political message, but it certainly takes into account what people are seeing in the world. And if I don't acknowledge politics, if I don't acknowledge the election, people will say, is she living on another planet? So there needs to be a very sure statement that I know what's going on, but here's how I'm going to look at it.
I want to tell you where I stand, and then Mitchell especially, because here, rarely do we see things this differently. My own feeling is politics have no business on the holidays. And I say that. Number one, everybody in this room is as smart as I am. I have a very bright congregation.
In which room? In this room?
This room also.
Your congregation?
No, this room is smarter than I am. Okay. But when I'm in my congregation, and there are smarter people in my congregation than I am, they are politically aware. They watch, they read, and they have their own ideas. They don't come to me or the synagogue or the high holidays for me to give them insight as to who they should vote for or what the political landscape is like. It's just, this is, I'm not, each of us has the right to do anything they want. I'm just telling you my perspective. My perspective is the high holidays are the most intensely personal days of the year, and the Jewish tradition has extraordinary insights in what it means to be a person in relationship to other people. That's what that's what I believe the high holidays theme is all about. What does it mean to be a person in relationship to other people? And I want to pick. By the way, we'll get to God. I specifically did not use the word God. That may distinguish me from the three of you. And I'm not saying God doesn't count.
Right.
But I believe the Jewish tradition is crystal clear. What it cares about is how do people treat other people. And I'm not the one who said it. And all the rest is commentary. I didn't say it. I believe that's what our tradition says at its rock bottom throughout the entire text. What does it mean to be a responsible, loving, compassionate human being who deals with all of the frightening parts of life and the anxieties of life and the complexities of life and the pains of life and the joys of life? What does it mean to be a person in community? And what's it mean to be a person in your family? And how do you deal with the fact that almost every family we know has problems with other family members? There's estrangement. How people can be estranged from each other. How friends can ultimately be estranged from each other. The high holidays come as a time to say that part of what Teshuvah is returning in this embrace. And so what I'm trying to do from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, and by the way, I believe the high holidays do has this incredible arc where we begin with Adam, the one person created alone, to ultimately what's it mean to be part of the Jewish community, to then be what does it mean to be part of the world. Isaiah and Jonah are what does it mean for the Jew to have responsibility not only to the Jew, but beyond to people in general. So I see the rabbis as constantly saying, you start with the nuclear family, you and your family, and you go to the Jewish community, and you go to the Jewish world, and you end up caring for all humanity. How does a responsible, loving, caring person actuate Gmilut Chasadim in his and her daily life? And you want to get politics? There's a million other places where that's the right, appropriate forum. And the problem is, as you point out, it tends to divide people. And I also don't want that at the high holidays. Partisan politics have nothing to do with the community. So to that
Sure
extent,
it does,
to that extent,
Mark.
okay, I want to
Sure
hear.
it does.
That's my perspective.
First of all,
and
I
now
want you to
yours.
know something, that there are members of my synagogue who don't believe that I should speak about politics. Generally speaking, though, there are people who don't agree with my politics, but they're entitled to their opinion. But they tolerate and listen because I think over the years they have discovered that I'm rather fair-minded, that I am knowledgeable, that I'm speaking from the heart, and I respect those who disagree with me. However, I do feel an issue such as, should the members of my synagogue be supporting AIPAC or J Street? Yeah, that's an important issue. Anything involving Israel, where half the Jews in this world live, is an important issue, and I think a rabbi in Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur should be addressing that.
I agree. But wait, I want to make sure I agree with that. To me, is not partisan politics.
Okay.
That's not Democrat, Republican.
Of course it is, Mark. Of course it is.
Is it?
Of course. Anything that I say during the past 8 years is going to be perceived as either supporting Obama's position or not.
I want to. Do you agree that if you talk about Obama or you talk about Israel, if you talk about Israel, you are ipso facto talking about Obama?
No, but I do think that and I think where I differ with Mitchell, whom I adore. I've only known him twice, but each time I like him more.
We all adore each
Thank
other.
you for bringing
It's really true.
him up. Look, this world lives in dissension. Not just the outer world, the Jewish world. I don't think that's the time, and that's why I wouldn't do the J Street AIPAC thing. It really does create, in many synagogues, maybe not in yours, a huge dissension. And rather than have these moments of real holiness, where I really want the divine, however you see God, and we all see God differently, to be there in their hearts, and not to see them thinking about, I hate what that rabbi said, or I hate what that guy over there thinks. I'm looking at him. And I give you an example. I was doing a Yom Kippur service in Royal Oak, Michigan. And near the end at Neilah, some guy from the back, whom I know, and I probably agreed with his politics on this, started screaming to me about something was going on in Israel and what we had to say. And he said, the gates are closing. I remember this guy in the back. And I said, Benji, the gates are going to close, and we're not going to talk about that. I said, we're just not going there. First of all, it's the end.
You should mention, by the way, for anybody who does not know what Ne'ilah is.
Oh, it's the closing service.
I want to take this a step further. I'm not sure we fully understand what our congregants expect of us on the high holidays, by which I mean the following. Never before do I remember how many members of my congregation have asked me who I'm voting for this year. There's a tremendous divide in the American community, in the Jewish community, and I would say within the framework of my own synagogue. There's always a divide, but it's stronger. This time it's not a matter of disagreeing with the other party, but almost hating the representatives of the other party. I think that's something I have to speak to, and I am going to speak about Trump, and I'm going to speak about Clinton, but I'm not talking about their politics. I'm talking about their personality and their characters, and what are the flaws in their character that we have to make sure we don't have in our lives. Is that talking politics? Or is that, how do you describe it? You don't talk politics, you just talk contemporary events.
I think we need to speak about issues that speak to where people are and people's lives. And the way you're entering is one way. For me, it's about, well, how do we even dialogue with one another? And what we're seeing in our world is people only turning on Fox News, or only turning on CNN, or only turning on MSNBC, or their Facebook echo chamber creates a situation where they're only hearing people that agree with them based on their posts.
I'm prepared to admit that makes for a good sermon.
But I think that that's the bigger problem, aside from those running for president, that we have lost the art of talking to one another. And that's something that concerns me in the Jewish community. If we can't speak to one another, if we can't sit at each other's table without saying, I have nothing to say to you because I don't agree with who you're voting for, we've really have a much bigger problem than who's actually going to be president.
There's no question about that. I just want to add something to what you had said about the importance of family and so on. When I said that on Yom Kippur, I speak for close to an hour, that sermon every year is completely dedicated to family issues. From start to finish. There's not a political wink, nothing else but family. Right. Because that is, in my mind, unquestionably, the greatest threat the Jewish community and to some degree the American community has to deal with, family issues.
In many ways, and I say this, kol hakavod to you, you have been a courageous rabbi. And whether I agree or not that politics do or do not belong in high holidays, what you've been able to do and the stands you've taken have been courageous, and they come from your heart, and you are as articulate and brilliant a sermonizing rabbi as there is in America. So my own predilection is to do it differently.
Everybody's got their own
but
style
I have
and
enormous
what they're
regard for
comfortable
who you
with.
are.
I often find that people want us to speak about the timely, but what touches their soul is the timeless. And what they walk away with are the sermons that have really touched who they are. And what's going on with the deal with Iran or the election of today is not going to speak to them. If we don't mention it, we're fools.
I agree with you.
But it's what's inside.
I agree.
I agree with everything except we're fools if we don't mention it. These are very bright people. They know exactly what we know. They know we know there is an Iran issue. They know we know there's an election. They know we know that Trump and Clinton, as we tape now, are controversial and create problems on both sides. They know it, and we don't have to talk about it. I believe they want what you said. They want their rabbis to, in some way, bring the Jewish traditions, insights into life to them. When I go to a synagogue, today, even today, and I hear a rabbi speak, what I want the rabbi to do is tell me something about the Jewish tradition that makes me more loving of and wanting to be a, quote, good Jew. That's what I want the rabbi. I want the rabbi to give me a great drash. I want a Devar Torah on the Sedra Parashat of the week that makes me understand something more about who I am.
You're not typical.
I'm not typical?
You are not typical.
What is typical?
Typical is I want a sermon that's relevant.
But to me, this is relevant.
That, your definition of relevant and Amcha, the world's definition of relevant, I think is very different.
But I you know, let's run back to the Sermon on Tears. I've never heard so many people tell me that was something they've always wanted to hear about.
Yes.
That they too have felt tears.
Yes.
And the relevance of
it was relevant.
It was beyond even what I thought it would be.
It was relevant. It was human nature, and it was speaking.
So I don't look. I am certainly a very political human being, and I believe that politics has to play a role. I also believe we have to be very civil, but I don't think the high holidays. I mean, there's a lot of Shabbats. There are a lot of other times
when there's more than 1,000 people who are not there.
But that's not my point. My point isn't that there's more than it's those that come at that time only, particularly. I don't think they're coming. You know, look, there are certainly preachers of all faiths that speak up politically to large crowds at different times. But the people that show up at that moment, I don't think they're particularly looking to hear how we feel about the candidates. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, Mitchell. You obviously have an amazing synagogue, and those are not just words.
No, I whip them into shape.
You do what you
That's
get
all.
them to do it, and I appreciate all that. But I'm just saying, I think that's a time where we want them to walk away saying, this is something I don't get anywhere else in the universe. I get this when I go see my rabbi and when I go see my congregation. They make me walk out feeling almost like I just talked to something special and something like God. I don't think they get that from having to go back to their family disputes, their disputes with all their best friends over whether or not they're for Trump or Hillary, or whether or not they're Democrats or Republicans, or whether or not they're for settlements
and
or
whether or not
settlements.
they're in favor of taking in immigrants or not. Is that a moral issue? Is that a political issue? Is that a relevant issue?
Probably it's a political issue for me.
So last
See,
year,
to me, that is not. Well,
Maybe
we
that
talk about the same
Mitchell,
things. We just call it different.
Maybe that goes
right, so
for
I
me.
agree
That's
with
an
you.
interesting
So
point.
I was once asked, why is immigration a Jewish issue? I said, why is immigration a Jewish issue? Look at our story. Look at our people. I mean, from Egypt till now, immigration is a Jewish
So
issue.
this is taking your drosh, your relevance, and bringing it into a contemporary issue and having Judaism speak to it. And despite the fact that people in my congregation would think of me as being a bit to the right, I made a very strong statement in favor of immigration and how that goes to the very core of our Jewish tradition. Was that politics? I never thought of it as being politics.
Did you do it on Rosh Hashanah?
No, but I would.
So
but it was a subject that worked during
I
Thanksgiving.
I actually thinking you're actually causing me to think of whether I would too, because I do think that actually goes into that line of the core of who and what we are as a people.
Right, what's our story?
So I'm not 100% sure of my answer to that.
Last
The issue of Black Lives Matter, is that politics? I don't think of it as such. I think of it as a moral issue. And I'm talking in Baltimore, where it's a big issue about Black Lives Mattering. And I'm saying things that I'm sure many in my congregation don't want to hear. But over the course of 38 years, there's been times they agreed, there's been times that they've disagreed, but I think you develop a certain credibility with your congregation that they're going to respect your opinion and think about it. And my responsibility is to make them think in a way that they might not have from just watching Fox, CNN, or MSNBC.
Has he convinced you?
I think on Black Lives Matter and on immigration, how I phrase it does matter. I think it would be very complicated for me to actually, to be honest with all three of you, to speaking to a group of people who don't think similarly. I mean, I'm sure there would be some, but not too many that don't think similarly to the way the four of us probably think about immigration and probably think about the importance of to make sure that there's not institutional racism in America. But I'm wary of it and I'm leery of it, and I'm not saying I'm nuanced about it. I'm not saying I would never say it. I mean, obviously, if I talk about Isaiah on Yom Kippur, I'm going to possibly bring up something like, what was Isaiah talking about when he said, if you did this fast and not to feed the hungry? I mean, what was he talking about if not about that?
About what?
Feeding the hungry and about
Yes, by the way, feeding the hungry, I understand. And it seems to me there are principles in Judaism. One of the things we're taught to do is care for other people, even the stranger, even the stranger. We're taught, by the way, to take care of the stranger as long as the stranger is not trying to kill us. The Jewish tradition says we have a very different responsibility to someone who's trying to kill us. But if someone's not trying to kill us, it doesn't matter whether they're a Jew or not, we're supposed to take care of them. And I believe the people who I'm speaking to, I want to give them the principles of Judaism, the values of Judaism, and I want them to then decide where do they stand on issues like Black Lives Matter or Syrian immigration. And so for me, and I'm only talking now for me,
Okay.
although I understand that what you've done is you've nuanced the discussion. For me still, to do a sermon on Black Lives Matter or on Syrian immigration, I feel that not only do I run the risk again, or all of a sudden somebody who is there to feel this is going to feel this.
What about
But-
if it's on homosexuality or transgender?
By the way, it seems to me,
Is that politics?
look, I spoke a long time ago on the high holidays that if you understand what it means to say it is not good for a person to be alone, that the Jewish community must embrace somebody who is homosexual, who is gay. And I got some people who wrote me and said, why do I want to come on the high holidays and hear that? But to me, that was an issue of how do we treat other people. And so there I went. So each of us has his or her own line. And I'm trying to just describe, and I'm not, it's like, I don't want to sound like I'm critical. I just do it differently.
Okay.
I think the issue, at least the way I've always approached it, is that I don't think I would ever give a sermon on just one of
Right.
these issues. I would never give a sermon just on Syrian immigration or Black Lives Matter or homosexuality. But as you said before, what's the principle? So last year, I spoke about the concept of Hineni. What does it mean to say, I am here? And what are we here to? And
Right.
what are we going to respond to? What is in front of us? For myself, as a mother, as a rabbi, as a daughter, as a sister, as a Jew, as an American, and where do I need to stand up?
I love it.
So it might be that when we saw those pictures of Ilan Kurdi, that little boy last year, how anybody could not be moved and how that couldn't then make its way into the high holidays, for me, would have been unconscionable.
Okay, only because we're running out of time. I want to talk for a moment about Teshuvah and what your sense
Yeah,
of
but
that is.
one second thing.
Okay.
I
Go
just
ahead.
think we have to say, and just really as a codicil to what you just said, we're not just told to care about the stranger. We're actually told that we have to love the stranger as ourselves. And love is a word most of us are afraid to use with anyone. And we're told in the Torah, that you have to love the stranger as yourself. That does put the Syrian refugee at a little bit different place.
I want to know about teshuvah for all three of you. It is the ultimate theme of Rosh Hashanah. What's it mean? What's teshuvah mean?
It means to look at myself and to help others look at themselves in such a way as to say, what are the major things that I need to change to be the person I want to be? And to look at that as strongly as I can and to make rational, reasonable decisions to move in that direction. But teshuvah for me is to say, what is it that is, that I could do better? It doesn't even mean I'm not doing some things good. What is it I could do better? And what is it that would mean a lot to the way I see people?
And the only word I want to ask you about is major. I think there are major things that you have to... I think that's true about most people?
I hope so, because I think if they're looking at themselves honestly, there are things they want to do.
Okay, I want to suggest it's all minor. What I mean by minor is, I don't think the Jewish tradition says, we want you to be radically different. We want you to be that different.
Oh, major
Right.
isn't, no, major and minor aren't the right words for that.
Okay.
A major thing is I want to be kinder to people. I want to be kinder. Doesn't mean I'm not kind.
I want to be
Let me
kinder.
finish.
Major is his flaws, minor are mine. Okay.
No, but that's what I mean.
No,
I don't
right.
mean. I mean, I want to be more open to people who are not like me. I want to gather people around. I mean, those are things that really could contribute. It's not that I don't go around and try to meet
You just
people.
want to be more.
I want to be better at some things that are important, and they are major.
Teshuvah for you.
I want to maximize my potential. I want to be able to look at myself in the mirror when those gates close, either at the end of Yom Kippur or when I'm dying, and say, I lived up to the person that I should have been. I mean, back to the theme of Yom Kippur, that I would never speak about anything political or timely, that sermon is the moment where we look at ourselves and we wonder, have we hit the right marks? And if we haven't, where do we need a shift? Where do we need a tweak? And is it the issue of, do we need to be more humble? Do we need to be more grateful? Do we need to be kinder? And if we can't articulate what we need to do better, then we haven't done enough tshuva.
Mitsuyan. What do you say?
I say that we're incapable of seeing what's wrong with ourselves because we're blind to it. We take selfies and then we fix them up and dress it up to make sure we look exactly the same. And that's why we have a series of al-chaitz, where we confess our sins. There's a list of 44 of them, and we recite it 10 times over the Yom Kippur day. And I'm challenging my congregation and myself, find one of those 44, one that pertains to you, and commit yourself right this minute that no matter what, this is not going to be my sin in the coming year. And in 44 years, you're a new man.
That's lovely.
We've all agreed, by the way.
No, we have not.
I think the three of us did.
No.
Oh, I disagree.
I'll tell you why. Mitchell's the only one who used the word sin.
Oh, I didn't use
And I
sin.
found that interesting. And again, I believe most Jews typically think the high holidays are about sin. And the Al Chet, which is for the sin of,
seemed to.
is a major, major theme and a major liturgical moment that reappears, as you say, over and over again. But it's interesting to me, and I'm not critical, it's just interesting to me that neither Rachel nor Steve used the word chet or sin. And I don't either. And I do think it is about being more. And I don't think most people are sinful. And at the same time, I think your insight is 100% correct. And what I love is, you're not saying to people, here are 44 things I want you to change.
Right.
If we change just one.
One.
How hard is it to change one?
Very.
Harder than you think.
Right?
So that's why.
Right. If and in essence, you said the same thing about
I
how.
said the exact thing, because it doesn't whether I use the word sin, it's whether or not he's not, you're not necessarily saying the person says for the sin of X, I'm a terrible person. We all do.
Listen,
Mitchell, I'm in the middle of a
sorry.
sentence. I know this is like, that's what Jews do, but let's just let me finish. Look, for the sin I committed before of being too haughty, for the sin I committed before it doesn't mean I'm this haughty person, but it means I can do better.
Oh, you didn't quote this. You didn't quote it right. And it's important for you to quote it right. It doesn't say for the sin I have committed before thee.
the sin we have committed before thee.
Very important, and every Jew should understand, the al-chet is in the first person plural. Jews don't say on the high holidays, ever in a prayer, I have sinned. There's one place. Basically, it's not about I. It's that we take responsibility for the community as a whole. And if the community has failed, we are some part of that failure. I like you're saying to them, find yourself inside this. But it's not about I. It's always about we. And so, yes, when I see the al-chet or the Yashamnu, boy, especially the al-chet, in the Chavurah is asked to give specific examples of what the general al-chet means. So if it is for the sin we have committed before thee by being disrespectful, then there is an example of how people in real life forget to include their parents or lie about the age of their children for economic gain, or in any way are specifically involved in ways that make them less than they want to be. We want to be. And so each of you says it in a way that I think is beautiful. We're all suggesting that teshuvah is about how do each of us in community live a better life, and all of us here have only talked so far about our relationship to other people. We will talk about God next time.
That's where sin comes in.
Well, I'm going to give you an opportunity to elaborate on that.
That's where you may differ.
We will talk. It'll be very interesting. You've heard three extraordinary rabbis share their different perspectives on what the themes of the high holidays are and what we all hope we want to be as the new year begins. Rachel Ain, Mitchell Wohlberg, and Steve Gutow, three people who have made extraordinary contributions to Jewish life, and now they're doing it with me here on JBS. And all of us hope that every one of you has Shana Tova. It's interesting to hear the language. We want you to have a good year. It should be a year of health. It should be a year of family. And for each of you, in your own way, you should find goodness in your life. It should be a good year for you. Be with us next time when these three extraordinary people will talk about God, the Unatan Tokef, and Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. As always, I invite you to be in touch with me with any thoughts or comments you may have to anything that Mitchell, Rachel, or Steve have said. Please email me, write me, post on our Facebook wall, tweet me. I look forward to hearing from many of you. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. L'chaim, my friends, to life, and l'shana tova, to a sweet and good new year.
L'chaim is a presentation of Jewish education in media.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS, the Jewish Broadcasting Service, with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the JBS homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to Jem, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.